We are going to download R and RStudio and install them both on this fresh, clean virtual machine Microsoft Windows. So I have Microsoft Edge down here. We're going to open that up, and instead of typing in the URL, we'll just go ahead and go to google.com or whatever search engine you want to use and just type in download R. And the first site should be the R project, r-project.org. Click on that. And then this site hasn't changed in years for the most part, so the top part looks very similar, and it has a download link here to download R. So click on download R. Go down to a mirror site that's close to your location. I'm in the USA, so I'm going to click on that. And finally, you have a prompt to pick your platform of choice, Linux, Mac, or Windows. I'm going to go ahead and download this for Windows. I'm running Windows on top of my MacBook in a virtual machine. Once you click on that, you get to this page. Then it tells you to install R for the first time, click here, and you finally get to the download link right here. Download R 3.6.1 at the time, and the latest stable release should be this one here that it gives you by default. There are developer versions as well you can download if you're interested. So I clicked on that, and with this I'm just going to go ahead and save it as, and I'll put it on the desktop so that we can find it easy. Now that's downloading. I can close, well, instead of closing this, let's go ahead and download RStudio while we're at it. We're not going to install it yet though. So again, just go to google.com and type in download RStudio. Very simple, and it's the rstudio.com. I like to use Google because sometimes when I tell people to go to RStudio, they might misspell it or something like that. But you can go directly to the link if you want. Most likely you're going to want this free version, the RStudio desktop. And so when you click on download here, it'll bring you down to installers for supported platforms. As you can see, it says Windows, Mac, and Ubuntu Linux. I'm again using a Windows machine in a virtual box, and it is the very top one. We're going to go ahead and download that. While that's downloading, well, let's just go ahead and save it actually. I'll save it as, and we'll put this on the desktop as well. And you really want to install R first because RStudio relies on R being installed. So here's my R version 3.6.1 on the desktop. Let's go ahead and install that while RStudio is finishing up the download. Of course, I'm going to click yes. I want to install this app. Pick your language and run through the steps. Read all the pages of fun and pick your location. And you probably want to install the 32-bit and the 64-bit file because there's certain applications that might be 32-bit versus 64-bit, and there are occasions where you want to swap out which version you want to use. We're not going to get into that here, but a lot of, for example, government applications are still using 32-bit versions of Microsoft Access, and sometimes with R you want to access the access. In order to do that, you need the 32-bit version. I don't want to customize, and here we go. We're just going to go through the menu system like any other installation. I'm sure that you're all familiar with that. We're going to load this up. We're not even going to test this out, honestly. Once it's done installing, we're just going to go ahead and install the RStudio. And RStudio is going to point to this version of R as its backend to actually run the scripts. You can also download previous versions of R. For example, if your work only has like a 2.x type version, you can download that as well as a 3.5. And within RStudio, you can actually set up which R to use, which version. So you can do it that way. Okay, R is all set up, and now we're just going to set up RStudio. Here's the other link for that. And again, it's a similar guide. Usually the default locations is what I use. Once in a while, you might want to change that to, say, an external hard drive or an SSD drive to save space on your local machine. But I think for the most part, using the defaults is all I'm going to do. And we're going to run this. And what I'll do when this is done is I will open it up and I will show you a couple quick settings, and then we'll run our first script just to show you that it works. So let's go ahead and click on the start menu, and we're going to type in RS for RStudio, and you can see it pops right up here. I'm also going to right click on it, and I'm going to pin it to my taskbar because that's where I like to put things that I use a lot. So now it's down here. I'm going to click on R. Now that's not R as in the R version 3.6. This is RStudio, and it just happens to have the R as the icon. So here we go. We have a RStudio set up. And let me just explain, this is the console. This area here is your environment where when you store variables, it'll show up there. And down here is kind of like a nice little viewer for files, for plots, to install packages. You can do all that down in this area. And of course, everything is customizable with size. This right here is the console, so we can do something like print and just type in hello world here, hit enter. And as you can see on output line number 1, it says hello world. This is not an R script, this is just the R console. Let's go to your tools and go to global options. And I'll show you just a couple quick things. Remember I said you can have different versions of R? Well, here's where you would change that. If you downloaded R version 2.x or a different version for whatever reason, it would be changed right here. Finally, we are going to go to appearance because I like to set this as a different size font, especially when I'm tutoring online. So I'm going to set that up to be a little bit bigger. And then also you can pick a color theme basically. So whatever you choose, Eclipse or whatever, let's just do a dark theme here, hit apply or hit OK. And it says, do you want to restart? Yes. And it's really, really quick usually. Now this is pretty good because it's running in a virtual machine on top of my MacBook. That's a 2017 MacBook Pro. So now I have my new colors. Let's start a new project, file, new project. This way we can contain all of our stuff in one directory. I'm going to put it in a new directory and we're going to do new project. We're going to keep it simple, simple, simple. Directory name, I'm going to call it first R project. Make it nice and simple. Now I'm going to click browse just to see where the default location is. So it looks like the default is under your documents. That's perfectly fine for me. I'm going to keep that. And I'm just going to click on create project. And you'll see only a slight change. Your files over here are now under that project. You see it's under home first project right here. You can see the directory structure. Let's go ahead and do a new script. Now this is your first R script, file new, or file new file, R script. There's a lot of options, and in other tutorials or further down the line with this tutorial, I'll show you and explain a lot of these other features. So let's click on R script. This is our very first script, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say print in parentheses hello world, and the world never replies back, so that's really awkward. Now there's two ways to run this code. You can either hit, if you're on a MacBook, Command Enter, and if you're on Windows, I believe it's Control Enter. Control Enter here, and as you can see down here on output line number 1, hello world, so you know it works, everything is fine, and that's it. Now you can save this file. Let's go ahead and click on Save, Control S, and I'm going to call it first script, and that's going to automatically default to the project directory, which is right here. First script, first R project, it's all accessible through here, which is nice. And then if you had plots, it would be here. Packages, we'll get into packages a little bit later, but to update packages or to install them, you can click on install. It makes it very, very simple. And for your global environment, that's again, if you have things in your RAM or your environment, for example, this variable, variable A, I'm going to assign that a number. And then I'm going to do Control Enter, and you'll see it shows up on my right hand side because it's stored in memory. It's using actual space, and here it is. To clean that up, you can actually delete the variables by clicking on this broom and clicking yes, and then you can start all over. That's one way to do it. Click on Run. It'll run the entire thing. And I thought there was a way to run the whole thing, but I guess highlighting it and hitting Run is just good enough for now. Well, that's it. I wanted to keep this short and simple for a Windows or a Mac user to download and install R. If you have any questions, put them in the comments or comment below or send me a message. If you have any tips or tricks, go ahead and put those down there as well. I'd love to hear from you. So stay tuned. There's plenty of more exercises and tutorials to go.